Hi, my name is Jacob Bartko, and I'm here with my co-host Julian Howe. Welcome back to Let's Talk Sports by the Lake, episode 11. We are here today to discuss a little bit of a recap of the NFL draft that happened in late April. We're going to talk about two of our favorite teams, the Cleveland Browns and the Detroit Lions, and then we'll also discuss some of the first-round picks and some of our thoughts on that. So let's get started again with the Cleveland Browns. As the Cleveland Browns were on the clock with the number one pick, they chose Baker Mayfield. Julian, what are your thoughts on the Browns making this a surprising pick? A lot of people didn't expect it to happen.
I think it definitely was surprising because I think it was three guys early on. I mean, Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, and Sam Darnold. And Baker Mayfield was kind of a wild card. People thought he would go maybe like in the top 10 somewhere, not the first pick.
I agree. He was the fourth quarterback on a lot of people's drafts early on in the draft process. And as you guys all know, the draft process is months and months of these players showcasing their talents, showcasing their athletic abilities, and going through interview processes and scouts digging on their history and their relationships. And there really was three quarterbacks that stood out that seemed like everyone knew one of those were going to go as the top pick. But it seemed like as the process went on, Baker Mayfield rose up the draft boards, and at the end of right before the draft, he was really anticipated to be the first pick overall. Me as a Browns fan, I was surprised with the pick. However, the more research I did and the more I've got to see Baker Mayfield speak and kind of learn about him, I think I completely like the pick. I think he's a polarizing figure. I think it's going to be good, but time will tell. Just like any of these picks, time will tell if he's the right person to turn this franchise around. Their next pick was at number 4 in the first round. It was Denzel Ward, cornerback out of Ohio State. How do you feel about that pick? I know a lot of people were surprised because they passed on Bradley Chubb on that pick. What do you think?
I think it was a good pick because they needed to add to their secondary. They traded for Demarius Randall, and they also signed T.J. Carey.
Yep.
So they're adding depth to their secondary. And I think that pick was them continuing to do that.
I agree. I think they needed a starting, go-to guy at corner, and I think they got that with Denzel Ward out of my favorite football school in Ohio State, the Ohio State University. So I was happy with the pick. I was a little bit depressed that they didn't get Chubb, but I think they made the right choice. The next pick we'll highlight for the Browns is the running back Nick Chubb. So they did get a Chubb in one of the rounds. 35th pick overall in round 2 out of Georgia. So they added some nice running back depth there behind Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson. And then another pick they made was Antonio Callaway, which was the 105th pick in round 4. He's a wide receiver. Antonio Callaway had some off-the-field issues, similar to that of Josh Gordon of the Cleveland Browns. What do you think they were doing, and what statement did they make in taking a player like that?
Well, I think they thought that he has a lot of potential because he didn't play at all last season for Florida. He was suspended, and he actually made the decision to put his name in the draft while he was suspended. So I think he has a lot of potential, and I think he was one of those receivers that a lot of people in the media thought would break out last year, and he couldn't do that because he was suspended.
I agree, and I think they're really taking a chance on a player that obviously didn't even touch the field in his last year at Florida.
Yes.
But he has that first-round talent, and if they can get him on the right track in his personal life off the field, I think that it's going to be a steal for them, in round 4.
Yeah, it's a great receiving core with Corey Coleman, Josh Gordon, Jarvis Landry, David Njoku, and Duke Johnson receiving out of the backfield.
I agree. They have a lot of weapons, so hopefully, Tyrod Taylor being the starting quarterback, and then eventually Baker Mayfield will be able to succeed. We'll move on to your favorite team now, the Detroit Lions. Go ahead and start on their first round pick there.
Okay, so in the first round, the Lions drafted Frank Ragnow from Arkansas, center. And I think it's really a good pick because he's one of the best run blockers in college football. He didn't allow a sack at all while he was at Arkansas. Maybe he only allowed a few sacks, but he was a really good center for them. And Brett Bielema, who was the former Arkansas coach, and he also coached at Wisconsin, as you know, said he was the best offensive lineman that he's coached since Joe Thomas.
That's awesome. That's high praise. I really think they did the smart decision, the Lions being in and getting some protection up front there for their franchise quarterback, Matt Stafford. I really thought they were going to address the offensive line in one of their first 2 picks, and they decided on Frank Ragnow, 20th pick overall from Arkansas. Their next pick is Kerryon Johnson out of Auburn. That was their 2nd round, and they actually traded up to the 43rd pick to get him. Why do you think they did that?
Well, they needed a running back, and I feel like they were really bad at running the football last year. They were last in the league running the football. So, and it was so bad, Jake, that on like short yardage situations like 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, they only converted 45% of those.
Oh my goodness!
So they really need to upgrade the interior offensive line and the running back position. And I forgot to mention that Travis Swanson, the Lions' starting center the past few seasons, left for the Jets. So
they had a hole there at center.
Yeah, they
okay.
did.
I think addressing that running back position, as you said, it was extremely important for them this offseason, and they've done that in the first 2 picks. The 3rd pick they had, it was the 3rd pick we're going to talk about today was their 4th round draft pick. And it was 114th overall, and he is a defensive end named Da'Shawn Hand. What do you like about Da'Shawn Hand?
Well, I think Da'Shawn Hand is really versatile, and I think he'll fit very well in Matt Patricia's defense because rather than having like a specific scheme, there'll be a multiple. So they'll probably switch up between 3-4 and 4-3 defense throughout the season, depending on who they're playing. So I think Da'Shawn Hand could play inside and outside. So I think it'll be a good pick for the Lions.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that the versatility is extremely important when you're having a defensive setup like that. The last pick we'll discuss of the Lions is their 5th rounder, 153rd overall, Tyrell Crosby out of Oregon. He's a tackle. So again, just readdressing that offensive line, maybe getting some offensive line depth. Do you think he could be a starter someday?
I think he could. Actually, Tyrell Crosby was the 3rd ranked offensive tackle in the whole draft, or 4th, depending on who you ask. And so I think that's a steal. For him to fall to the 5th round really bodes well for the Lions, and they can add depth to that offensive line, which I think could be a really good group if they stay healthy.
Very good. I hope they can stay healthy, and we'll see Matt Stafford throwing from his feet and not off his back foot this year. So that does our draft recap for the Browns and the Lions. We'll touch on some of the quarterbacks that were taken. I know we previously discussed the top 3 that people anticipated going. The Browns obviously drafted Baker Mayfield out of Oklahoma, 1st overall, and then the Jets. They traded up to that 3rd overall pick, and Sam Darnold kind of fell into their lap. Sam Darnold was the consensus number 1 quarterback in a lot of people's draft boards, and they just kind of fell into the Jets' lap, and I don't think the Jets even saw that coming, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with Sam Darnold, the thing he needs to work on is limiting turnovers, because he turned the ball over so many times, Jake. I think he had 30-plus turnovers, interceptions, a lot of fumbles, so he needs to work on that. But that's coachable.
Right, that is coachable. He has the size and the talent to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. The next pick is from the Buffalo Bills. They selected Josh Allen from Wyoming. They traded up to get him, and I know a lot of my friends that are Bills fans are very happy that they selected a quarterback with that 1st round pick, and they didn't have to give up both of their later on 1st round picks to get him. So I think that was huge for the Bills. I think Josh Allen has a lot of potential. He's the rawest quarterback out of this group, has the biggest intangibles, but he just really lacks that passer consistency, and that was his biggest knock coming into this draft. I'll let you talk about the last 2 that round out our top 5 here.
Josh Rosen was drafted by the Arizona Cardinals 10th overall, and he went to UCLA for college. And I think with him, I mean, he's a really polished passer, but he was injured his last 2 seasons at UCLA, so that's really a big concern about his durability. And do you have anything you want to say about Josh?
Yeah, I was going to say that a lot of people had Josh Rosen as the second quarterback coming off the board here, and a lot of people knocked him for some character concerns, not necessarily like involving the police, but just in terms of maybe his attitude or cockiness coming into the draft. But he's out to prove people wrong, being selected by the Cardinals 10th overall. I think he may get a potential chance to start later on in the season, but I don't know that he's going to be the quarterback coming out of training camp. And then the last pick is
Lamar Jackson from Louisville, quarterback. And so he was drafted 32nd overall to the Baltimore Ravens, who traded into the first round to draft him. And it's really interesting because Joe Flacco has been their starter for many years, since 2008. And I think with Lamar Jackson, he has potential to be really good. He's obviously has the athletic ability, and I think it's a good passer because he passed for 3,500 yards in back-to-back seasons. So I think he can throw the football.
Absolutely.
We'll probably have time to develop with Joe Flacco still being there.
Right, and I think that's where the Ravens they made a smart choice to go up into that first round and get him, because you get that additional year of eligibility by drafting him in the first round. And they will, he'll be able to learn from Joe Flacco and kind of pick up on some of the good habits that he does have. So I think it was a smart choice by the Ravens. But again, so there were 5 quarterbacks selected in the first round this year. It'll be interesting to see over the next couple years which is the best quarterbacks that come out of this group. So hoping it's Baker Mayfield, personally. But that does it for our recap of the NFL draft. We'll be back with NBA.
Okay. Welcome back to the 11th episode of Let's Talk Sports by the Lake. We are returning to discuss the NBA playoffs, the second round. So, Jake, why don't you start with the West?
Sure. So the Western Conference semifinals had the number 1 Houston Rockets versus the number 5 seed Utah Jazz. The Rockets ended up winning that series 4-1, 4 games to 1, moving on to the Western Conference Finals. The second series in the semifinals was the number 2 Golden State Warriors versus the New Orleans Pelicans, and the Warriors ended up winning that series 4-1. The Rockets, obviously handled the Jazz in easy fashion, 4-1. How do you think James Harden and Chris Paul really took over that series?
Dude, they're a great backcourt, obviously. And Chris Paul scored 40 points in the last game, which is rare for him to see him explode like that.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
So, they played well, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they'll do against the Warriors.
I agree. I think, James Harden didn't have to carry the load in the series, and I think for them to be successful as a team moving forward, going against the Warriors, the balance really needs to be there. He may have to carry him 1 or 2 games out of the series, but they need to get more scoring out of, Clint Capella, obviously Chris Paul. So I think it was good for them to see that and take that positivity moving forward. The second series that I just brought up was the Warriors versus the Pelicans. Obviously, the Pelicans a little short-handed without DeMarcus Cousins. They had still, Anthony Davis dropping, 30 points a game there. But the Warriors won that series 4-1, and it was Steph Curry's, arrival back to his team for this series. How do you think he did in coming back, and why do you think the Warriors won that series?
So the Warriors already have Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, so they already had a lot of firepower. But Steph Curry came back hot. He was averaging almost 25 points a game, so that was really helpful for them. And they won the series in 5 games.
Yeah, I think, bringing Steph Curry back to that all-star starting 5, it just really put them, gave them that confidence that I think they were lacking at the end of the season. But that team is just so talented. I don't know that they wouldn't have still won 4-1 in the series if he didn't come back. But that's going to help them going forward with the team chemistry again and getting Steph reacclimated into their starting 5. So I'll let you introduce the East.
Okay, the East. So the first series was the number 1 Toronto Raptors versus the number 4 Cleveland Cavaliers. And as we know, the Cavaliers swept the Raptors. And why do you think that was, Jake?
LeBron James. 2 words. I think, really, the Cavs, going into that first series, taking that all the way to 7 games with the Indiana Pacers was surprising to a lot of people. But they lasted throughout that series. They made it work. LeBron carried them through that series. With this Raptors series, LeBron James started out, he hit a couple game winners, and he really put the team on his back again. But you saw that in game 3 and 4 that other people started scoring. Kyle Korver was inserted into the starting 5. You saw J.R. Smith starting to come around, Tristan Thompson getting more rebounds. They've really started to play more as a team now.
Yeah.
But yes, I think because of LeBron just really taking his talents to another level in this year's playoffs, that's what's really brought him to this point so far. How do you think they can carry that going forward?
Well, I think you about covered it. I mean, obviously LeBron needs help. I mean, he's gotten help from the guys you mentioned and Kevin Love as well. So it's really has to be a team effort. And LeBron just has to continue doing what he's doing.
I agree, and I'm sorry, Kevin. I completely forgot you there. You really turned it around this Raptors series. So me as a Cavs fan, I'm very happy to see that, and hopefully they can continue that going forward. Which brings us to our next series.
Yes. So the number 2 Boston Celtics beat the number 3 Philadelphia 76ers in 5 games. So they won the series 4-1. And I think, Brad Stevens outcoached Brett Brown because there are times in the series where the Sixers had a big lead and the Celtics came back to win the game. And Brett Brown usually didn't call a timeout like when that was happening. And so I think Brad Stevens outcoached Brett Brown. And also I feel like the Celtics did a great job of stopping Ben Simmons, because Ben Simmons, as we know, he likes to drive to the basket, and he wasn't really able to do that a lot in the series. And I think Game 3, Ben Simmons only scored 1 point, and it was just really a tough series for him. And the Celtics just played great with their young talent of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum.
I agree. I think the first thing that you said there about Brad Stevens out coaching, the Celtics don't have Gordon Hayward or Kyrie Irving, and they're still going to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that really says a lot about Brad Stevens being able to, really get the most out of his talent. They have a very young core group of people. People are still saying that Brad Stevens is a magician or a Phil Jackson. I don't think he's quite to that level, but a lot of the players they have are very young, but a lot of them are still top 10 picks. So they do have a lot of talent there, but you got to give a lot of credit there to Brad Stevens for this series and how far he's brought in that team with all of their injuries, with that limited bench. But I think they did a great job of congesting that lane, stopping Ben Simmons into driving and being able to kick it out for threes. I think they've done a great job. So it'll be interesting to see how they match up with the Cleveland Cavaliers going forward into the Eastern Conference Finals. So that does it for our NBA segment. We're going to come back to you here shortly and discuss the opening of the MLB season and which teams are hot or not. And welcome back. We're here on episode 11 of Let's Talk Sports by the Lake. We're going to be discussing the MLB season. Opening day is long gone. We're about a month into the season now, 2018. And we're going to discuss the AL and who are the division leaders right now currently. We're about 35 games into the season. The New York Yankees are leading their division with a 26-10 record. They've won 8 straight. They're really the hottest team out there right now. They've surpassed the Boston Red Sox for first in that AL East. What do you think the Yankees? Why are they succeeding so early into the season? They started off slow. What are the big names doing, Julian?
Well, the big names are hitting home runs, Jake. I mean,
that's the simple way to put it, for sure.
So you have Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, and Didi Gregorius. Each of them have 8 home runs or more. So that's really been helping the Yankees offense.
I agree. I think that their power is showing here at the beginning of the season. They're really winning games with their bats. Their pitching has come around. Tanaka's pitching well, but the back end of their rotation still needs some help. But yeah, I think it's simply put, their bats are alive, and that's really the Yankees' strength. Their young bats. The next one leading division is the Houston Astros. They're leading their division with a 24-15 record. Their pitching staff is really carrying them. Justin Verlander is having a phenomenal year. Charlie Morton, the back end of their pitching staff, is pitching great. So the Houston Astros are really the #1 contender to win the World Series again. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes forward in the season. Honorable mention is the Boston Red Sox. Again, the Yankees just beat them last night to surpass them as the division leader. And then the last division leader is the Cleveland Indians. They struggled a little bit out of the gate this year. Their record is 18-18. Their pitching is still dominant, but they have, they're almost last in the league in hitting. So, how do you think they can turn that around, Julian? Do you think the weather is part to play in that?
I think so. The winter lasted a long time in the Northeast, as we know. So maybe they'll pick it up going forward.
Yeah, I think so. I think playing in Cleveland and there was a lot of rainouts throughout the league this year, but I think that warmer weather is really, you can see it in the past few games, is really starting to get their bats turned around, and Jason Kipnis and Edwin Encarnacion started out very slow, like normal, but I think their bats are starting to come around and starting to hit some more home runs and raise their on base percentage. So will be interesting to see if the Indians can carry that that record they've had the past 2 years forward and make it back to the playoffs. But we'll keep an eye on that going forward, Julian. I'll let you introduce the NL.
Okay, so the Atlanta Braves are leading the NL East with a 21-14 record. They've won their last 2. So why do you think the Braves are doing so well?
Well, the Braves have a young core, just kind of like the Yankees. They have Ozzie Albies at short. He just hit a home run to win the game 1-0 the other night. They have Freddie Freeman at first base. They have a lot of talented players that are young that I think they're starting to come around. And I think they're continuing to progress and learn the major league system and really come together as a team. So I think that's why they're starting to play better. They've won 2 in a row. But I think the Braves are going to make the playoffs this year. That's my bold prediction. I think that's, their young core is really starting to hit well and gel together. They have a couple younger pitchers as well that are starting to come to fruition. So it'll be interesting to see how they do. And then the St. Louis Cardinals, they are leading their NL division. The Pirates have played well at the beginning of this year, surprising everyone. But I don't know if they have the talent and ability to sustain that throughout this year. So it'll be interesting to see who comes out of that division. It's really up for grabs.
It is.
Next, do you want to talk about the Diamondbacks?
So the Diamondbacks are leading the NL West with a 24-12 record, and their pitching has been spectacular so far, and they're hitting the ball pretty well.
Yeah, their pitching has been well. The big thing about the Diamondbacks is they've installed a humidor in their stadium, and a lot of people were kind of indifferent about how that was going to affect how they hit the ball and how they pitched. The humidor is supposed to reduce the humidity in the ballpark, which is supposed to lead to less home runs. So a lot of the pitchers are actually pitching well at home. Patrick Corbin has really come around this year. He is one of the top pitchers in baseball right now. They still have Zach Greinke on their staff and Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray is on the DL right now, but I think that's going to be their strength this year is their pitching staff. Zach Godley, another pitcher on that team. They have 4, ace caliber pitchers. So I think that's why they're leading their division, and I think they're going to be one of the favorites to win the NL this year. Our honorable mention right now is the Colorado Rockies. They're 21-16. They're doing well. Obviously, their bats are always doing well, and they're in that elevation in Colorado. But I think some of their pitchers are starting to come around. And Chad Bettis has pitched well for them this year. They don't really have a number 1 go-to guy. John Gray, some say, is their ace, but we'll see how that unfolds throughout the season. So that does it for our episode 11 of Let's Talk Sports by the Lake. Again, I'm your host, Jake Bartko. I'm here with my co-host, Julian Howell, and we welcome you to the spring of Let's Talk Sports by the Lake. Thanks for tuning in.